Hello everyone, welcome to the Makri Virtual. Hope you are doing good. Today I'm going to continue with your chapter number 5, that is optimizing the program performance. Till now we have covered 10 topics. Now I'm going to start with your next topic, that is 11th topic, some limiting factors. Till now we have discussed what are the ways to optimize, or what are the ways or method to optimize the program performance or increases the performance of a program. Now, today I'm going to start with your next topic, that is how the limiting factors affect the program performance, or what are the limiting factors that affect the program performance. So first of all, let's take a quick recap what we have covered in the yesterday's class, then started with the next topic, that is the today's topic. So let's take a quick recap what we have covered in the yesterday's class. Not yesterday's class, so sorry, it's a Friday's class. First of all, we have covered 4 topics in the last class. One is introduction, then basic pipelining scheduling, then instruction level parallelism and dependencies, then local optimizations and loop. In first 5, we discussed what is scheduling, that is how to schedule or give the ordering of the program execution so as to improve the performance of the program. That is the scheduling. That what is the focus, that depends on the hardware based scheduling or software based scheduling. Then we have discussed what is the difference between hardware based scheduling and the software based scheduling. We can generate more information, but there will be a significant number of cases where there cannot be enough information or exact information to store the data for optimization. Still, we can assess the hardware during the compile time. So we have discussed about the how compile time and the software compile time will be used as a processing method. Then we have discussed what is the compile time optimization and how we can use the compile time optimization by enabling the data series. That is where how we can access the multiple paths of the data. That is where what we have covered in the yesterday's last class. This is a diagram of hardware approaches. Then we have discussed about the difference between the high level optimization and the low level optimization. That is how different optimization techniques are followed and what is the main difference between the high level and the low level. High level optimization that are likely to improve the performance but does not depend on the target architecture. Low level optimization perform a series of optimization which are usually very target architecture specific or very low level. Example, prediction of data and control flow, software pipelining, loop unrolling. We have focused on these topics only in the last class, that is the low level optimization. That is what I am going to talk about. Then we have discussed about the state branch prediction, how pipelining can be used, what is the use of pipelining. There are 2 types of pipelining or 2 types of approaches used for the prediction. One is your direction based, one is your profile based. This is your direction based predictions. Then profile based prediction we have discussed. Then we have discussed about the ILP, that is instruction level parallelism, that is more than one instructions are executed in parallel. We can approach this upper bound via a series of transformations that either expose or allow more ILP to be exposed to later transformation. Then what are the dependencies available for the ILPs? Hence our main aim to improve the performance by exploiting the ILPs. Then we have discussed how do we exploit the ILP, means what are the methods to exploit the ILP. An optimization method or a compiler does this task for optimizing or for exploiting the ILP. So compiler is used to exploit the ILP, that is instruction level parallelism. Then we have discussed about the key ideas, what are the used. Then loop level parallelism and dependency. there are two types of dependency. One is loop carried and one is loop independent. This is the example we have discussed in the last class. Then next is your local optimization. This is also we have discussed in the last class, that is what is local optimization and the loops. That is how locally we can optimize the things and what are the loops available to optimize the things of the or methods of the array. So what are the local transformation? That is operate on the basic block or the extended basic block. That is known as the local transformation. Suppose I have written a program in C language. Suppose I am using the variable, local variable in one inner loop. That is your transformation of the local transformation. That is locally it will depend on the multiple programs. Locally it will depend on the multiple functions, so that transformation can be done in an easiest way. So local transformation means transformation that is carried out in a sequence or that is carried out inside the inner loop. This says our transformation should rearrange the code from data availability statically at the compile time and from knowledge of the underlying hardware. What are the key ideas? We have discussed about key ideas, explore more ILPs. Then we have discussed about the loop unrolling. That is how we can unroll the loop so that loop will terminate at the suitable places. This is loop unrolling replaces the body of a loop with several copies of the loop body, thus exposing more ILPs. What are the key ideas? Reduces the loop control overhead and thus increases the performance. Then we have discussed the comparison between static loop unrolling and the software pipelining. That is how multiple tasks can be executed at the same time. As I said the example earlier, suppose there are 3 persons that can execute their task simultaneously, or if there is only one person that can do the task altogether, that is finishes one task, then going to the next task, then finishing next task, going to the next task. So this takes lots of time. But if there are 3 persons, 3 tasks, so they will execute in the shorter period of time simultaneously. Then we have discussed about the static loop unrolling. What are the observations? What are the loop control that is used for the static loop unrolling? This is the example we have discussed. We will use the following loop. This is static loop unrolling. This is the example we have discussed in the last class. This is also example that is used to issuing the command. There are loops used, that is LD, ADD for addition, ST, BNE, BATT, UI. This is the example we have discussed. What are the uses of store? What are the uses of BNE? What is the use of DADD UI? This says if we decrease the loop management overhead, how we can increase the performance? We can increase the performance by using the static loop unrolling. This is your static loop unrolling continued. This is what we have discussed about the complications and the advantages or the disadvantages that is used in the static loop unrolling that we have discussed in the last class or the yesterday's class. Then we have also discussed what are the uses or what are the methods that we use for using the command. That is, what are the significant complications and disadvantages that is used by using the more commands that is used by using the static loop unrolling. Then what is software pipelining? It is an optimization that can improve the loop execution performance of any system that allows ILP, that is instruction level parallelism. It derives its performance by filling the delays we have discussed. This requires fewer control methods. This is what we have discussed. What are the key ideas? Increase the performance by scheduling instructions from different iterations into a single open account, into a single access account. We have discussed all these things in the last class. This is the example we have discussed in the last class. This is the diagrammatical representation how pipelining can be executed in a computer architecture. We have discussed about the red line instructions. We have discussed about the NOP, that is what is the use of NOP, how we can access the NOP, and what are the advantages or disadvantages of using the no operation. Then we have discussed about how it is done, that is with the help of example. These are the steps for using the software pipelining. Then we have discussed about the loop unrolling, that is a comparison between the software pipelining and the loop unrolling. This is a comparison with the help of the diagram. This is the software pipelining. This is what we have covered in the last class. Today I am going to start with your new topic, that is according to your book, limiting factors. We have seen that critical path in a data flow graph representation of a program indicates a fundamental lower bound on the time required to execute a program. This says whenever there is a data flow graph, that is a graph will flow or representation of a program indicates a lower bound on the time required to execute a program. That is more time required or the more data flow representation whenever there is a flow of data. So there is a more time required to execute a program. Why? The main reason is that the more data will dependent on the another data. That is one branch or the one node depends on the data or the output of the other branch. That is where the sum of all the latencies along that chain equals t, then the program will require at least t cycles to execute. Then this says we have seen that the throughput bounds of the functional units also impose a lower bound of the computation. That is, these are the limiting factors that whenever we perform the operation, the more command or the more output or the more input depends on the other output. Suppose there is a graph, there is a data flow graph representation. Then one node is depend on the another node. In turn, another node depends on the another node. So there is a chain that depends on the multiple commands or multiple nodes. So these are the limiting factors. First of all, what is register filling? The benefits of loop parallelism are limited by the ability to express first is your register spelling. The benefits of the loop parallelism, that is, what are the benefits of loop parallelism? That is, are limited by the ability to express the computation in the assembly code. In particular, the IA32 instruction set only as a small number of registers to hold the value being accumulated. That is, if we accumulate the register, if we use a register, there is an accumulation. That is, more than one instructions are executed or stored at the same time. So that is a limiting factor that affects the program performance. That is, program will not execute it at the proper timing. That is your main limitation or main limiting factor that affects the performance of the program. Now, let's see what are the registers and what are the limiting factors used in the registers with the help of PPT. So this is chapter number 5 continued, understanding the memory performance. First topic is the global register allocation. Now, what is a global? That is, we can access the basic globe boundaries. Means more than one people or more than one data can be accessed by more than one people, because that is global. That is accessed by everyone. that is we can access or use across basic building or basic block boundaries. That is, we can access the boundaries of the object so that we can access the objects or we can make the object suitable. So that is globally to, that is reachable to everyone. Then what is an approach? That is a model register allocation as a graph coloring program. What is a graph coloring? Given an undirected graph G, this is undirected. Why it is known as undirected? Because there is no direction, there is no arrows among the nodes. These are known as nodes like D, A, B, C. No one, four nodes, four nodes, four nodes, and these are the graphs. So these are the undirected graph. Why it is known as undirected? Because there is no arrow between the lines. A coloring of G is an assignment of color to nodes such as any two nodes connected by an edge. This is known as edge. D to C is known as edge. Can have or have different colors. So this says this is the one of the main problem of the register, that if we make the graph, then each edge has a different color. Now let's see D to C, there is one edge. In the same way D to C there is one edge. So there is a duplicacy of the edge, but the register require, or the requirement of the register is that both the edges have a different color. So it is not possible to make the color. In general, graph coloring is NP complete, that is completing the NP problem. Register allocation continued. Register allocation as a graph coloring problem means what are the problems that we face while color the graph. First is your nodes. These are the variables. Then edges, interference among the variables. As I told you, these variables are known as nodes and these lines are known as edges. If two variables are simultaneously live at a And now it's okay. Nelda, now it's okay. Okay, sure. Then these are the heuristic names and their description. That is how we can use the opcode, how we can use the guard, how we can use the loop exit. So these are the multiple useful heuristic names and their description. Then there is a call, return, store. These are the static branch prediction heuristic that is used for the static branch methods. Then static branch prediction. There are two types, or there another type is profile based. This contains multiple parts. That is instrument program binary, run with representative input set, recompile program. That contains again two parts: annotate branches with the hint bits, or restructure the code to match the predict node taken. Best performance is 75 to 80% accuracy. Now, the next branch prediction is your dynamic branch prediction. One is your static, next one is your dynamic branch prediction. Now, what are the main advantages why we are using the dynamic branch prediction? The main advantage is that learn branch behavior autonomously. That is, we can use the compiler, we can use the analysis of the compiler, so that profiling can be done in an easiest way, so that we can use the dynamic branch prediction to adopt the changes, whatever the changes that the compiler or whatever the changes that the operating system do, that we can change or we can use in the dynamic branch prediction. That is, program phase changes branch behavior. This is first proposed in 1979 to 1980. Continuously refined since then. This is Smith predictor hardware. This is one of the example. This is not in use. So if you want to see this, then it's okay. Otherwise, it is not useful. Then next is your two-level branch prediction. Till now we have covered dynamic, static. Next is your two-level. That is, more than one branch can be used for predicting the program performance. That is your two-level branch prediction. This is your PC, that is your program counter. These are the two bits, last two bits, that is most significant bits. This is the bit that is used. One is your PHT, that is your branch prediction. This is the prediction of the branch, that is 10. This says BHR adds global branch history, that provides more context, can differentiate multiple instances of the same static branch, can correlate behavior across multiple static branches. So these are the methods how we can use the two-level branch prediction. That is, it provides more context, more clarity, more efficiency. It can differentiate between the multiple instances of the same static branch. Now, next is your understanding the memory performance. So first of all, let's see with the help of book. This is the spelling, register spelling. That is how we can use the register spelling. Then branch prediction. We have covered about the branch prediction and the misprediction penalties. That is, a conditional branch can incur a significant misprediction penalty when the branch prediction logic does not correctly anticipate whether or not a branch will be taken. Now we have learned something about how processor operate. We can understand why this penalty arises. So what are the multiple parts, or what are the multiple branch instructions or branch prediction that is used, or myth prediction that is used, that we have covered with the help of slides. This is the example for the branch prediction. This is the combined for example. Now, next is your understanding the memory performance. That is how memory will perform. That is the main target, or that is the main topic, that how we can understand the memory performance. So first of all, let's take 5 to 10 minutes break, then come back, then starting with this topic, that is understanding the memory performance. So let's take 5 to 10 minutes break, then starting with this topic. Now let's start with the next topic, that is understanding the memory performance. That is how memory performs, that affects the performance of the program, that is understanding the performance of the memory or understanding memory performance. This said, all of the code we have written thus far and all of the tests we have run access relatively small amount of memory. For example, the combining routines are measured over vectors of less than 1000 elements requiring no more than 800 bytes of data. That is, we have discussed till now multiple methods, multiple tests, multiple code that requires less amount of memory. But if we require more amount of memory, that is the requirement of the memory is very high, then we can investigate the performance of the program that will load, that is reading from the memory into the register, and store, that is writing from register to the memory operations, considering only the cases where all data are held in the cache. So that is your memory performance. One of the unit, that is one of the measure that how we can access or how we can understand the memory performance is, first of all, is your load performance. That is how load, or what are the load operations that is available for the memory performance or for the memory. This says the performance of a program containing load operations depends on the pipelining capability and the latency of the load unit. That is denoted by the CPE, cycles per element. So in our example so far, we have not seen any performance effects due to the latency of the load operations. The address for load operations depends only on the loop index I, so the load operation does not form a part of the performance limiting critical path. This says the load performance depends on the path of the memory, that is how we can fetch the data and how we can store the data, and that is how we can use the fetch and the decode cycle that we have discussed in the last class. To determine the latency of the load operation on machine, we can set up a computation with the sequence of load operations where the outcome of one can determine the address for the next. So this is the example that we have used, how we can access or how we can execute or how we can calculate the load performance. So now let's see with the help of slides what we have discussed with the help of slides. This is understanding the memory performance. That is, first of all, understand what is memory hierarchy, then what is a cache, then what is the cache memory. So first of all, memory hierarchy. That is, whenever we arrange the memory elements in sequence or in direction, that is known as the memory hierarchy. This is the memory unit is an essential component in any digital computer. That is, it is one of the essential element, it is one of the essential component in any digital computer, since it is needed for storing the program. Why it is so essential? Because it is needed to store the program and data. As we all know, without storing, no operation will be performed, no output will be displayed. So it is very necessary to use the memory for storing the programs and the data. Next point says, not all accumulated information is needed by the CPU at the same time. That is, CPU requires the information after time interval. That is, it does not require on at the current level. That is, all the accumulated information is not needed by the CPU. Therefore, it is more economical to use low-cost storage devices to serve as a backup for storing the information that is not currently used by the CPU. So this says it is very economical to use how low-cost storage will be used as served for backup for storing the information that is not currently used by the CPU. So that is, it is more economical or it is more cheaper to use the low cost devices, low cost storage devices to store the data that so that program or the operation will be performed and then displays the output. That is your memory hierarchy. This is the memory hierarchy. Since 1980, CPU has outspaces DRAM, that is your dynamic RAM. This is how cycle will improve or how will graph will improve from the year to the year. That is from 1980 to the next part. This is 1980, 1985, 1990, 95, 2000, 2005, 2010. This is how we can jump from one graph to from one year to the another year. This is a gap grew 50% per year. That is the gap increases between the processor and the memory. How do architects address this gap? That is, how do they consider this gap or how do they map this gap? This is put smaller, faster cache memory between the CPU and the dynamic RAM. That is how they grew the gap or how they calculate the gap between them by using the concept that is known as the cache memory. So this is how do architecture address the gap by using the cache memory between the CPU and the dynamic RAM. This is the CPU, that is processor, memory is your dynamic RAM. So uses the cache memory between these. Creates a memory hierarchy. Now, next says the memory unit that directly communicate with the CPU is known as the main memory. As I told you, there are different types of memory that represent the memory hierarchy. So, the memory unit that directly communicate with the CPU is known as the main memory. Next is that provides or devices that provides backup are known as the auxiliary memory. So that is directly communicate with the CPU known as the main memory, that is internal, that provides backup like pen drive, CD, DVD, that are known as auxiliary memory. And the examples of main memory are RAM and ROM. Next point says the memory hierarchy system consists of all storage devices employed in a computer system from the slow by a high capacity auxiliary memory to a relatively faster main memory. That is, memory hierarchy represents the hierarchy from the auxiliary memory, that is from the secondary memory that is slow, to the highest memory or the fastest memory, that is your main memory, to an even smaller and the faster cache memory. So this point says the memory hierarchy contains primary memory, that is main memory, secondary memory, and cache memory. So these are the three basics memory that is or that form the memory hierarchy. This is memory hierarchy. This says the main memory occupies a central position. As I told you, that is internal to the memory, occupies a central position by being able to communicate directly with the CPU and with auxiliary memory devices through an input-output processor. This is the main memory that interacts with the input-output processor, interacts with the cache, interacts with the CPU directly. So this is the main part, or this is the main central position that interacts with everyone. Input-output processor, cache memory, CPU. A special very high-speed memory known as cache. This is cache that lies between main memory and the CPU. So this cache lies between CPU. So it's used to increase the speed of processing by making current programs and data available to the CPU at a rapid speed. So cache memory is used to increase the access time. That is, if data is available in the cache memory, this is the example. If data is available from cache memory, then CPU does not go to the main memory. It simply fetches the data from the cache memory, performs the operation, and then displays the output. That is the main advantage. That's why we use the cache memory in between the main memory and the CPU. Then memory hierarchy continues. CPU logic is usually faster than the main memory. That is, CPU logic is faster. That is, this is a logic that is faster than the main memory access time, with the result that processing speed is limited primarily by the speed of the main memory. The cache is used for storing segments of program currently being executed in the CPU. So cache, this is the cache memory that is used for storing the segments of the program that is currently being executing in the CPU. That is, if a CPU can execute, or if a CPU executes 5 instructions and currently it is executing third instruction. So cache is used to storing the current instruction that is executing or that is executed by the CPU, and temporary data frequently needed in the basic calculation or the present calculation. The best example is that if I am using BODMAS formula, that is bracket, open, division, multiplication, there is some intermediate result during the processing of the current instruction. That intermediate result as well as the final result is stored in the cache memory. That is used for storing the segments of the program currently being executed in the CPU. The typical access time ratio between cache memory and the main memory is from 1 to 7. So it may lie from 7 to the 10. So the access time ratio, that is cache, is more faster than the main memory. Next point says auxiliary memory access time is usually 100 times that of the main memory. That is, first of all, cache memory is highest, that is more than 7 to 10 times of the main memory. Then main memory to the auxiliary memory, that is 1000 times of the main memory. Next is your main memory. What is the main memory? That is, most of the main memory in a general purpose computer is made up of RAM. As I told you, the main memory is generally or general made up of the RAM, that is random access memory, integrated chip circuit or circuit chips, but a portion of the memory may be constructed with the ROM chip. That is, main memory contains RAM as well as the ROM. This is the full form of the RAM, that is random access memory. Integrated RAMs are available in two operating modes. That is, there are two parts of RAM. One is static, one is dynamic. This all contents we have discussed in the starting phase of the classes when we have discussed about the memory, theory of the memory. ROM full form is read-only memory. Now, what is the RAM? That is random access memory. The RAM is internal memory or the main memory that is used for executing the instructions of the program. So first part of the RAM is your static RAM, that is SRAM. This says each cell stores bits with a 6 transistor circuit. So in static RAM, each bit, that is 0 or 1, stores with a 6 transistor circuit. Static RAM retains value indefinitely as long as it is kept powered, relatively insensitive to disturbances such as electronic noise or electrical noise. That is, it is not affected by the noise that disturbs the network or that disturbs the signal. It means static RAM is 8 to 16 times faster and more expensive than the dynamic RAM. These are the differentiation between the static RAM and the dynamic RAM. That is, static RAM is faster and more expensive than the dynamic RAM. Then next is your dynamic RAM, that is again the category of RAM. Each cell stores bit with the capacitor and transistor. That is, first point of static RAM is that each cell stores bit with the 6 transistor. But in dynamic RAM, each cell stores bit with the capacitor and the transistor. Next point says value must be refreshed every 10 to 100 microseconds. In that, value cannot be refreshed. It retains the value indefinitely. That is, it cannot be refreshed. That can be permanent. That cannot be changed. But in dynamic RAM, it have to be or it must be refreshed every 10 to 100 microseconds. Then next point is it is sensitive to the disturbances. Static RAM is not sensitive. It is not affected by the disturbances, static RAM, but dynamic RAM is affected by the disturbances. Static RAM is much faster and more expensive, while dynamic RAM is slower and cheaper than the static RAM. This is the SRAM versus DRAM summary, what we have covered. This is the transition per bit 6. This is 1, access time 1, that is faster. Access time 10, persist, that is retain the data. Yes, does not retain the data. No. Sensitive, dynamic RAM is sensitive while static RAM is not sensitive. Static RAM is more cheap, costlier, that is more expensive. That is 100 times expensive. Dynamic RAM is only 1%. Applications, static RAM is used in cache memories, dynamic RAM is used in the main memory frame buffers. This is a comparison between the static RAM and the dynamic RAM. Virtually all desktop or server computers since 1975 uses dynamic RAM for main memory and static RAM for cache. That is, most of the computers are using dynamic RAM for the main memory and the static RAM for the cache memory. Now, next part of memory is your ROM, that is used for storing the programs that are permanently resident in the computer. This is the main point, that is permanently resident, that is permanently stored in the computer, and for table of constants that do not change in value once the production of the computer is completed. The best example is that whenever we start the computer, there are multiple screens which are mandatory to be executed or to be displayed whenever we start the computer, that is at the time of booting. So that screens will be stored in the ROM, that is permanently stored in the ROM, that is stored by the manufacturer who manufactures the computer. That you cannot change, you cannot modify, you cannot make any changes in that screen. That is constant, that is permanent, that is done or that is made by using the memory that is known as the ROM. The best example. Next point says the ROM portion of main memory is needed for storing an initial program known as the bootstrap loader. As I told you, this is the main portion of memory for storing an initial program. Initial program means whenever we start the program, that is known as the bootstrap loader, which is to start the computer software operating when power is turned off, which I told you this is the second point. Now, main memory, a RAM chip is better suited for communication with the CPU. That is, RAM is more convenient way, most betterful way for communication with the CPU if it has one or more control units that selects the chip when needed. The block diagram of a RAM chip is shown in the next slide. The capacity of the memory is 128 words of 8 bits. That is 1 byte per word. This is the diagram for the RAM. This is chip select 1. That is CS1. This is the read operation. This is the write operation. Then there is a 7-bit address that is denoted by the 80. So this is the RAM chip that contains 128 into 8 RAM. That is the 8-bit bus system. Then this is the chipset 1 or chipset 2, read operation, write operation, 7-bit address. These are the parts, that is CS1, CS2, read operation, write operation. This is WR, this is memory function, then state of the data bus. This is the chip, that is the structure of the chip of the ROM. First of all, chip select 1, that is CS1, that CS2, this is the 9-bit address, that is your address bar. That is 5.2 into 8 ROM. That is 8-bit bus system. Now, next part is your memory address map. That is how we can map the different addresses, how we can map the one memory to the another memory. This is memory address map is a pictorial representation that is represented by the picture of assigned address space for each chip in the system. That is how one memory is transferred or how one memory is translated into the another memory, that is represented by the pictorial representation that is known as the memory address map. This is to demonstrate an example. Assume that computer system needs 512 bytes of RAM and 512 bytes of ROM. So this is the example. That is how we can map the different memories or how we can translate the different memories into the one another and the vice versa. Next point says the RAM has 128 bytes and needs 7 addresses lines. Why it needs 7 addresses lines? Because 2 power 7 is equals to 128. Where the ROM have 512 bytes that needs 9 address lines. Why 9 address lines? Because 2 power 9 equals to 512. This is your memory address map. One is your RAM 1, RAM 2, RAM 3, RAM 4. These are the hexadecimal addresses and these are the bits. That is from 10 to the, or numbering from 1 to the 10, these are the bits available. This is how we can convert from RAM to the ROM, or how we can map the different addresses of the memory. Next point says the hexadecimal address assigns a range of hexadecimal equivalent address for each chip. That is, the hexadecimal address assigns a range of hexadecimal values that is equivalent for the address of the next chip. Line 8 and 9 represent 4 distinct binary combinations to specify which RAM we choose. So this is line 4, line 8 and 9, that is 8 and 9 is used to represent 4 distinct binary combinations to specify which RAM we choose. That is 8 and 9 contains 1, this contains 2 parts, which this RAM will choose or either RAM 4 will choose. In 9 line, this is RAM 3 is choose or RAM 4 is choose. When line 10 is 0, this is line 10 is 0, CPU selects a RAM, and when it's 1, it selects the ROM, because it is 1 at the ROM and 0 at the RAM. So whenever it is 0, it selects the RAM. Whenever it is 1, it selects the ROM. Now, next is your cache memory. This is your next concept, that is your cache memory. But before that, let's take a quick review of your book. This is the diagram, or this is the example that is discussed with your book, that is your load performance. That next is your store performance, that is how we can store the data in different memories like cache memory, main memory, that how we can store the data. This is the diagram for storing the data, or this is the example for storing the data. Then how we can measure? By using the function. This is the function, read-write function, that is used by using the iterations. These are the multiple iterations that depends on the read-write dependency. This is the details of load and store unit. This is the load unit, this is the store unit, this is the data cache. That is how the data will be fetched from the cache memory for loading the unit and for storing the unit. So first of all, it loads the data from the cache memory, then it stores the data into the cache memory by using different registers like EAX, EBX, ECX, EDX. This is the how we can abstract the operations for read-write operations. These are the multiple operations. This is the how data will be flowed, that is data flow representation of function. This is example 1, example B, that is how data will be flowed from one part to the another part. This is the example or the practice problem. Now let's see what is cache memory. Cache memory is the alternative, or it is a mediator between the primary memory and the main memory. Sorry, primary memory and the CPU, or the main memory and the CPU. So it's lies between the main memory and the CPU. So whenever CPU wants the instruction, it either fetches the data from the cache memory or either fetches the data from the main memory. But if the CPU fetches the data from the cache memory, so it is very better to fetch the data. Why? Because the access time is very low. Instead of going to the main memory, we are using the cache memory. This is your cache memory. If the active portion of the program and data are replaced in a fast small memory, the average memory access time can be reduced. As I told you, the memory access time is reduced, thus reducing the total execution time of the program. Such a fast small memory is referred to as a cache memory. So the size is very small, but it is very fast, such is known as the cache memory. The cache is the fastest component in the memory hierarchy and approaches the speed of the CPU component. So it is one of the fastest component of the memory hierarchy. Again, when CPU needs to access memory, the cache is examined. If the word is found in the cache, it is read from the fast memory. As I told you, if the instructions, if the words, if the data is available in the cache, then CPU simply fetches the data from the memory. But if it is not available in the cache, then it goes to the or checks in the main memory, then access the data from the main memory, passes the data from the main memory to the cache memory, and then in turn execute the instruction that is required by the CPU. So if the word addressed by the CPU is not found in the cache, the main memory is accessed to read the word. As I told you, if it is not available or it is not addressed by the CPU, not found in the cache, then the main memory is used to read the word. When the CPU refers to memory and finds a word in cache, it is set to produce a hit. So as per an example, if the CPU finds the data in the cache, that is known as a hit. Otherwise, it is known as a miss. And the performance of the cache is known or done by the or measured by the formula that is known as the hit ratio, that is hit divided by hit plus miss, that is number of hits available divided by number of chances, that is it may be hit, it may be miss, that is divided by the aggregate or total, that is hit plus miss. Next is the better characteristics of cache memory is its fast access time. That is the main feature or the main advantage of the cache memory is that there is a fast access time or there is a quicker access time with respect to the CPU. Therefore, very little or no time must be wasted when searching the words in the cache. That is, no time will be wasted while searching the words from the cache memory. The transformation of data from main memory to cache memory. As I told you, when data is not available in main cache memory, then the cache memory approaches to the main memory. So there is a mapping between the cache memory and the main memory that is done by or that is known as the mapping process. And there are three types of mapping in computer. One is associative mapping, then direct mapping, another one is your set associative mapping. This is how mapping will be used or how mapping will be understood One is CPU, cache memory, main memory. Now, performance, that is, what is the performance of the cache? That is cache performance. This is, although a single cache could try to supply instruction and data, it can be a bottleneck. For example, when a load or store instruction is executed, the pipeline processor will simultaneously request both data and operation. That is, we can execute more than one instruction by using the cache memory. Hence, a single cache would represent a structural hazard for load and store. So this is the limitation, that a single cache could lead to the hazard, that is disturbances for the loading and the storing purpose. One simplest way to conquer this problem is to divide it, that is divide and conquer. One cache is dedicated to instructions and another to the data. That is, there are two caches used. One cache is used for only instructions and one cache is only used for data. Separate caches are found in most recent processors. Then how to or what is the formula for accessing the memory? That is average memory access time, that is instructions into hit time plus instructions miss rate into miss penalty plus data, that is hit time plus miss time or miss rate into miss penalty. So this is the average memory access time. Assume 40% of the instructions are data accessing instruction. Let a hit takes 1 clock cycle and the miss penalty is 100 clock cycle. Assume that the instruction miss rate is 4% and the data access miss rate is 12%. What is the average memory access time? So this is the example that you should calculate what is the average access time. So that's all for today's session. Now, if you have any doubts, then please text that out. I will answer you. But before that, let's take a quick review what we have covered in the today's class. From the book we have covered till this. In the next class we have covered about the improvement techniques, that is performance improvement techniques. So first of all, let's take a quick recap of the today's class. We have started with the chapter number 5, that is continue of the chapter number 5. First topic is your understanding the memory performance or register. This is not your main topic. The main topic is your the registers or increasing the memory or increasing the program performance or limiting factors. So the first topic is your global register allocation, that how globally registers will be allocated. What is the meaning of global? What is approach and what is graph coloring? That how we can color the graph so that every edge will represent different color. That is your global register allocation. Then what are the nodes? That are the variables that are used to store the data or that are used to represent the data. Then edges. Edges are way to connect multiple nodes, that is multiple variables. Then live ranges. What are the live ranges? That is multiple nodes can use the different varieties of live ranges for executing the instructions. This is the diagram of the live ranges. Then global register allocation, that is perform the global analysis, identify the live ranges and compute the interferences. Then build the register interference graph. Next is your advanced branch prediction, that is how we can use the advanced branch prediction that contains multiple parts or multiple methods. One is your control flow speculation, branch direction we have covered, branch target prediction, high bandwidth, high frequency fetch. This is a diagram we have discussed, that is branch speculation that contains two parts, either leading speculation or trailing confirmation. This is how we can cut or how we can eliminate the path and how we can initialize the new path. This is mis-speculation recovery, that is how we can recover the mis-speculated path. Then what are the tracking instructions? That is how we can track the instructions, how we can assign the instructions, how we can give the grouping to the instructions. This is the diagram that we have discussed, how to control flow or how to show the flow of the program. Then static branch prediction. These are the heuristic names and their descriptions. Then static branch prediction, profile based. Next is we have discussed about the dynamic based prediction, that is what are the advantages, why we are using the dynamic branch predictions. Then what is Smith predictor hardware, two-level branch prediction we have discussed. Then we have discussed another topic, that is understanding the memory performance. In this we have discussed three parts, that is memory hierarchy, cache performance. First of all, memory hierarchy, that is your different types of memory that is used in the digital computer, that is used for storing the programs and data. This is the diagram we have discussed. How we can, or how the architect enters the group, that is this group, by using the cache memory, or by using the cache or the memory. Then there are different categories of memory, that is one is internal memory, that is known as the main memory. One is used for backup storage, that is known as the auxiliary memory. One is the memory that lies between the CPU and the main memory, that is known as the cache memory. This is the slide we have discussed. What is the access speed, what is the access time between the cache and the main memory, how main memory works, what is the advantages or what are the disadvantages, or what are the types of memory, that is RAM and ROM. RAM contains two parts, that is static RAM and dynamic RAM. This is a comparison between the SRAM, that is static RAM, and dynamic RAM. Then we have discussed about the ROM, that is used for permanently storage of data. Then main memory, this is the RAM chip, this is the ROM chip we have discussed. Then we have discussed about the memory address map, that is how we can map the memory addresses. This is cache memory. This is cache memory continued. Whenever we access the data, or whenever the CPU accesses the data from the cache memory, that is known as the hit. And whenever the data is not available in the cache memory, that is known as the miss. And the performance or the speed or the capacity of cache memory is calculated by using the hit ratio. That is, hit ratio equals to hit divided by hit plus miss. Then cache memory, what are the mapping techniques that is available? One is associative mapping, one is direct mapping, one is self-associative mapping. Cache performance, average memory access time formula. So that's all for today's session. Thank you so much everyone. Now if you have any doubts, then please text the doubt, I will answer you. And in the next class, I will start with the next topic, that is improvement techniques, and then that is your next topic, how to identify and eliminating performance bottleneck. So these are the two topics of the tomorrow's class. So that's all for today's session. Thank you so much everyone.